did marry Lily, my Aunt Lilka. There's pictures in the book, there are pictures. And Bush married my Aunt Sonia, who is still living. She's the only one who's still living today, Sonia and my mother. But my parents divorced many years ago, so my mother doesn't consider herself Belsky. It's an amazing story. They had lived and saved themselves. You know, we would have said Dainu, but they walked out with 1,200. We're, my generation of Belsky husbands, numbers about 125. And our children now, they're the next generation. Between that and all the families that they saved, the 1,200, and taking trickle down to that, they're counting up to 125,000 or some huge number like that. So the push to get the story told was because all the survivors were dying off. You know, this is the last few years. So if you have stories in your families or your friends, get it down, whether it's on a computer or on a tape recorder or in film. Is not so easy, but you gotta get it written down so we can give it to the next generations. Those kids were sitting here, and this young man, it's gotta be written and read and reread and told and retold.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, when they decided to make the movie, how did they come around to make a movie, and which brothers were alive at the time?
There were two books. There have been two books written about Belsky. The first was called Belsky Brigade in '93. I'm sorry. The first was Defiance in '93 by Nahama Tech.
And who wrote that?
Nahama Tech, an Israeli woman, and she's one who sold the rights to Paramount Gambish. At the time when she wrote the book, the brothers were all living. 10 years later, in 2003, a second book was written by Peter Duffy called Belsky Brothers. Nahama Tech cousins. It was a very big reunion last September, October at the Heritage Museum in Battery Park, where they did a private LCD showing. What else can I tell you?
Brenda, thank you. I really can't thank you enough.
Amazing tale.
And I'm
They didn't know their own strength. They just knew that they weren't going down without a fight, and they knew they wanted to save others. And they banded together, and
how many brothers were there originally?
10 brothers and 2 sisters.
What about the baby?
I don't know about that baby. I don't know anything about that baby, but I do know that the 2 sisters, did they shut off or no? The 2 sisters, the older one, my Aunt Tyga, had a baby going into the woods in the very beginning of the war. And they took her into the woods. She's my cousin Lola. And there's pictures of her too. She got sick in the woods right in the very beginning. And 2 of you said, she's never going to make it in the woods. You can't keep her in the woods. So they took her out, and they took her to a farm nearby. They had been friends with the farmers, all their neighbors were all farmers. So they took her to a non-Jewish farmer and said, please take care of Lola. She was 6 months old. Keep her till we can come back and take her. When they came back to get her 4 years later, she thought she was their daughter. She thought she was a Christian girl. She didn't know she was Jewish. She didn't want to leave those parents.